What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be getting a little bit bizarre, and we're going to talk about the battle system from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, specifically parts 1 and 2 in today's video. That's going to be Hamon and the vampiric abilities shown from both parts. So let's just go ahead and hop right on in. Hey, before we get started with this, I just want to give y'all a heads up. This is going to contain spoilers. For this video, it's just going to be parts 1 and 2, and then in the next video, 3 and onwards. So, if you have not read or watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, this is your warning. Spoilers ahead. Some are going to be slight, some are going to be major. So, with that being in mind, if you don't mind, or if you're caught up, let's just go ahead and hop right on into this. Alright, so I'm going to be starting off with vampires because I believe that this is going to be a tad bit more simple, and we'll get to Hamon in just a bit. 2 ways that a vampire is created is through the stone mask, which you attach to your face and then causes the spikes to go into your head, and with blood being used as the activating force. That's how a vampire is created. The other way is if a vampire gives their blood to somebody else. We see this in part 3 when Dio, after Cool Ice, for the localization, or Vanilla Ice if you're reading it, or the original Japanese, after Vanilla Ice cuts his head off as a way to give blood to Dio, Dio decides to pretty much cut his wrist and have his blood pour onto Vanilla Ice, causing him to be reborn as a vampire. They have enhanced senses, agility, strength, the basic boost that you normally get. They can also pressurize the fluids in their eye, causing it to shoot out like beams, like eye beams. They're also able to freeze things through touch, and sometimes just the atmosphere itself. If they touch a Hamon user, they're able to freeze the Hamon user, and thus messing up their breathing techniques, and because the blood flow doesn't work because of how frozen they are. They're also shown to be able to create hybrids from animals, and this is how Dio was able to survive, by fusing his head to Jonathan's body. They're also able to create zombies, who range from mindless to having thought and patterns. Have plans, stuff like that. The best instance I can think of a long-term planning is the zombie who killed George Joestar II before part 2 started. They're also able to, I'm not sure if this is vampires in general or if this is just a Dio ability, but they can create these flesh buds where they're injected into a person's brain. Dio is able to control them like he was able to Kaiquin and Polnareff. The flesh bud is also deadly to the user. If, for instance, Dio thinks that someone's going to betray his secrets of his stand, like he does with Enya, the flesh bud is pretty much activated, and it kills the user. Also, I don't know if this is vampires in general or if this is just a Dio ability. We see later on in part 4 where Okuyasu's dad, the flesh bud was still in his brain by the time Dio was killed, and when that happened, it pretty much cursed him, and he turned into like this little like sludge slime looking monster. Again, from what I've seen, it doesn't. I honestly can't discern if that's an all vampire ability or if that just happens to be one, like Dio's special ability is the flesh buds and the curses that come from there. So, Hamon is first introduced in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Volume 2, page 158. It's considered life energy, and that's why it's so strong against vampires. You have to have a steady breath for it to be effective, and it can be used in a multitude of ways. You can send ripples, stunning your opponents. You're able to, one of the abilities is called the Zoom Punch, where you dislocate your arm, causing your arm to extend, so that way you're able to punch people from further away. Like I mentioned, If your breathing goes awry, you cannot use your hormone. You have to have a certain rhythm to your breath, and you have to stay in control of your breath the entire time you want to use it. Also, like I mentioned before with the vampires, if a vampire grabs a hold of you and it freezes, you can't conduct hormone as easily because your blood flow pretty much stops. So because of that, the blood flow, the breath, if it can't get to your arm or your leg or wherever you get frozen, you cannot conduct hormone that way. Alright, so on page 174 of volume 2, we learned that hormone ripples are the same as the sun. And around page 85 through 93, we learn more about hormone and its abilities, how it can heal someone with gangrene, and it can slow your aging so you'll look 20 years younger. It's also shown by Tom Petty that you can at least look into the future somewhat. Now, this isn't exactly said outright, but later on in the series we're introduced to stands part 3, and I'll cover that, and I'll cover those later on in a different video. But basically, Joseph has a stand called Hermit Purple that conducts hormone very well. He's able to use this with electronics such as TVs and cameras to where he's able to pretty much like ascertain locations. That's how he's able to find Dio, is with the fly that shows like, hey, this is an Egyptian fly, stuff like that. There's how they're able to find the mansion where Dio is located. And also during the Steely Dan or the Dan of Steel fight, he's able to use a TV using Hermit Purple and his hormone to look inside of his brain to look for Steely Dan's stand lovers. And this might be a little bit of a side note, but Iraqi has said that if the Stardust Crusaders went back in time to part 2, they'd see Hermit Purple wrapped around young Joseph, and he has been shown using almost a bit of future sight, such as next you'll say, you bastard, and he was like, you bastard, and the opponent was like, what? So the way how I've interpreted it is that if you use hormone and you're trained well enough in it, you get a basic future sight. And should a hormone warrior choose to, they can, at the risk of their own life or at the final moments before they die, they can send the remaining energy to another warrior, causing said person to gain a surge of power. We see this in volume 3, page 142, when Zeppeli transferred the rest of his hormone to Jonathan, and Jonathan gains a huge burst of power because he inherited the hormone from Zeppeli. Alright, so on page 174 in volume 3, we're introduced to 3 of Zeppeli's allies, Dyer, Straitso, and their master Tom Petty, who I've just mentioned. There are hormone warriors who train with Zeppeli. On page 220, it's shown that hormone can be transfused into a rose and to hurt Dio, who has been turned into a vampire. As long as it's a living thing, hormone can reside in it. But if it's something inanimate like metal, it's got to make contact for it to work. The way how I read this, and I don't know if this is true or not, I haven't seen anything that says otherwise. If I have, I may have just missed it. If it's a living organism, such as the rose, I believe that hormone can stay inside of it for an indefinite period of time, up until you go to use it against the undead. I think, and with, again, with the steel, like the candelabra that Straitso uses whenever he brings it down upon the zombies, if it's an inanimate object like that, you can, of course, charge it up with hormone, but I think it's got to be an almost immediate thing for it to actually stay effective, or otherwise you just, you wasted your breath, you wasted a bit of hormone energy by just charging up this inanimate object that ultimately didn't really do anything. And we, again, we see this example done by Straitso on page 230. Alright, so now we're on to part 2. Hormone was expanded on a bit by showing different ways it could be used, such as Caesar using bubbles, Joseph using clackers, things of that nature. Again, we also kind of saw that, like I said just a minute ago, with Straitso using it with like the candelabra, I believe that's what it is. So, and we also see it at one point. Zeppeli had some he had some wine in his hand, and he like was able to spit it out through his teeth and just cause it to be pressurized and cause some damage. What we're going to be focusing on with this part and going into depth is we're going to be talking about the Pillarmen, the main antagonist for JoJo's Part 2. So, what are the Pillarmen? Well, long story short, they are a race of superpowered beings that lived hundreds of thousands of years ago on the American continent. It's like they're supposed to be like the Mayans and the Aztecs, so South America continent. They're the creators of the Stone Mask, specifically Kars. He's the leader of the remaining Pillarmen. But anyways, so whenever you take the Stone Mask and you take the Red Stone of Asia and you combine it, this allows one of the Pillarmen to become what they call the ultimate life form, and they're totally immune from the sun's rays. Like the sun, they are able to go out and stand in the sun and still be all powerful. And we're going to go into depth with each of the three main Pillarmen. We're not going to count Santana because, of course, even Carr says that he was considered a dog, so he doesn't really have any special like forms or anything like that. Alright, so the three Pillarmen, we got Kars, AC/DC, and Wamu. Kars is light, AC/DC is flame, and Wamu is wind. Kars, he basically creates a blade from his bones and has like these sharp teeth that rotate extremely fast, making it almost look like a chainsaw. The reason why it's light mode is because it pretty much reflects light. AC pretty much can shoot flames, and the flames are basically his blood that are boiled at extremely high temperatures, and he's able to shoot them out. One of his moves is where he creates like these holes in his back, and he just does like this cartwheel and just shoots out flames everywhere. Wamu is able to create windstorms, and it can cause the wind to surround his body and reflect the sun rays off of him, so that way he could stand out in the sun and not have to take any damage, or to an extent worry about that. And he's also able to turn himself invisible. Alright, so combined with the Stone Mask and the Red Stone of Aja, Kars becomes the ultimate life form. Now, what exactly can he do as the ultimate life form? Just about anything he wants. You don't believe me? Well, alright. He can change into just about any living thing on the planet. He was able to create a squirrel that ate a squirrel. He's immortal. He has, and this comes straight from the wiki, he has reactive evolution, so his body just adapts to extreme conditions, like when he evolved a continuous layer of inorganic, porous material to survive being submerged in magma. He also became the strongest hormone user known to man, and it was stated by Stroheim that it was on the same length as the sun. He was literally able to melt skin. And all honestly, the only reason why he lost is because he got Joseph got lucky as fuck, sent him flying on a giant rock that got shot through with volcanic pressure, and technically he's still alive. He's just floating through space, but he's just brain dead because of how long he went through, because he's immortal and there was nothing for him to do. Bit of a side note. Also, technically not necessarily a fighting style, unless if you're talking about the Eyes of Heaven video game. You have the excellency that is German science, where Stroheim becomes a cyborg. Alright, so that does it for the battle system for parts 1 and 2 of JoJo's. Just as a disclaimer, as I do not own the manga past part 1, I will be using the JoJo wiki from here on out to get all my examples from parts 3 through 8. As always, for this and the next video, I'm going to have the link to the wiki down below, so that way if you want to double check, you can check it out for yourselves, double check me, or fact check me if possible. And next time, we're going to be standing proud and talking about what probably made JoJo's as popular as it was with stands. And after we talk on the stands, I'm going to go in depth on which one I prefer and the pros and cons, so be on the lookout for those videos. As always, please don't forget to do the usual, like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends as always, and as always, I want y'all to have a great day, and I'll see y'all later.